boom. Okay, they could hear us, and now you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I know as well.
Of
Um,
course.
to do the intro that I must do because of the way Twitch is, these are RP interviews, and I don't know why I said it like that. And I do them because I'm looking for more skills and um, just to talk about the more broad concepts of RP and the meta concepts behind them, even though meta is a bad word. Um, I do think I become better as a role player over time by doing them. And then, of course, if anyone else wants to glean any sort of information from them, they can do that as well. So I normally try to invite people with unique viewpoints and ideas that I want to ask about and showcase. So here we are. Yeah.
Normally, not this time though.
Okay, well, actually, this time more than most times, for the record. Um, I I have played with you throughout many years at this point, even though we aren't super close
Mhm.
and our characters are never super close. But
Mhm.
how did you get into RP and how'd you wind up right here?
Well, um, it's complicated because I technically RP'd before RPing. I would go on like official servers, and Tori and I just always loved to fuck around and tell stories. And so I would pretend to be like her husband, or we would just pretend to be running a tavern or anything like that on an official, not an official Rust server, but in a private Rust server.
Hmm.
We decided we were going to build a tavern. We were going to force RP, and we had an admin then decide to TP people to us and shoot us with rockets. And
Hmm.
so we were like, maybe we should have an RP server because we've always found it fun. We even did Dark Side RP, which is, or sorry, not Dark Side. That obviously that's the Atlas one, but
Yes.
Dark Side something like that. It's in Gmod. It is very loose, but we would have fun in it, and so we've always RP'd even before we RP'd. Just even if it wasn't serious, we always got a kick out of pretending to be other people, pretending to be characters, and particularly doing voices is really
Mm-hmm.
what led us into this. And then Tori found Darkside RP, which is an Atlas server. And from there, we just started looking into RP, official RP servers.
Mm-hmm. And uh, I already know because I asked her because I've interviewed
Mhm.
Tori. Um, why the switch to Conan?
We no longer found Atlas as fun as we once did. It felt, in comparison, limited to the types of stories that you could. It felt very much like people wanted to be one thing or the other, and that's pirate or navy. And it seemed that for the most part, if you wanted to get a lot of RP, you kind of had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we were just like, well, we waited 2 years for Darkseid to come back. And in between there, we said, hey, let's try Conan. And we just ended up loving the modding community in it because it was so like, um, people seem to help each other more, trying to get as many mods as possible in order to tell like or have as many types of people, types of creatures, types of things inside of it, and some of it sexual, obviously, and some of it not. Um, but yeah, I was just we loved how much Conan had, and we just fell in love with it and decided to stick with it.
Yeah. So just hearing you speak is making my brain trip out because
Oh,
I have heard you through multiple different characters who don't sound the
yeah.
same, but
Uh-huh.
some words you say, I'm like, oh, Giovanni, right? And then Um, some of them are the vampire. Some of them are obviously Ulfric.
Mhm.
How do you go about choosing what your voice is going to be and the accent and all the stuff you can do?
Sometimes I choose the voice before I even choose the character. Ulfric was actually gonna have a different accent. I wanted him to have kind of Sean Bean's voice, but I couldn't do it. So I ended up just doing, okay, monotone seems to fit him really well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just stuck with that. And I think it works really well for him either way. But with like Giovanni, for example, sometimes it's me telling Tori a joke, and we're
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? Let's do it. I said, I started talking in a New Jersey Italian accent when we were playing Valheim, and we're just goofing off. And GG is coming. I think it was GG, or it might have been something else. And I said, well, what if we just did that? What if we just did New Jersey, New York Italian accent, and those are our characters, and then we built our characters around that idea,
Mm-hmm.
and thus those characters were born, and we just added on to that. And that's sometimes how the process goes.
Um, do you use okay, telescopes here. Perfect. Um, do you, do you use voice changers or anything like that to create your voices?
So every voice so far that I've done has just been me.
Okay.
Um, the only voice that I've used a voice changer for has been Ulfric, and that's because I knew that I wanted his to be a bit deeper than what mine was. I wanted to have less of me in it, especially because I wasn't really doing an accent. So I wanted to give it a try with Ulfric, and so far I ended up liking it. And I'll probably do that a lot more just to be easier on my throat. But Giovanni, all those other characters, it's just been me doing an accent.
Awesome. I'm gonna say I knew it, and that's why I wrote it down. Because the maybe the last time I saw you as Janupi, or the time before, Ulfric sounded different, and I was like, "What's different?" It sounded, uh, I don't know, different. Maybe less monotone or less deep or something. And I was like, "Wait, has this been a voice changer the whole time, or is there like
Yeah.
a setting or something?" So that's very interesting. Do you have to monitor what you're putting into the server, or does that matter, or how does it work?
I mean, I usually have one of my friends test it for me, and they'll stream it to me, and I'll look and see how it sounds, and if I like it, then that's what I go with. I mean, it's the first time I'm using a voice changer, so
Hmm.
I wanted to make sure that I sounded like a guy. And when Juby first heard me, she was actually like, "Oh," because she thought I was, that Ulfric's voice was just my voice.
Hmm.
So I was like, "Oh, good. I'm glad that it fooled you into thinking that I was a guy." That was the
Well,
point.
I've heard you as Giovanni, and uh,
Hmm.
I thought Giovanni was, uh, well, I mean, I don't think anyone's anything, you know what I mean? But like, I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is clearly a male character, so it's
Hmm.
plausible that a male is playing it. Um,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
eh,
there's definitely people like that, or there. I mean, even with Baron, and I didn't use a voice changer for Baron. I still got people thinking that I was a guy, but it was just more of a personal thing. Um, I wanted my voice to be just a tad deeper than what it normally is,
mhm.
and so I tried that with Ulfric. But all the other characters, I was like, well, I'm gonna lower my register a bit and just play it because it's okay if it's not, you know, um, it's okay if it's not convincing. I think a lot of people do get a bit nervous. Um, but it's okay. If there are people think you're a girl playing a guy, it's fine. Sometimes the reason I really just try and go that extra mile is really so that other people don't accidentally say she or he,
Mhm.
which I've had happen, but I'm just like, whatever about it. What are
So
you trying to say, you cunt?
the reason I called Telescope out is because that is another player who is able to play, in my opinion, a wide range of characters, and we've talked about like how do you do that and how do you get them so different and all that stuff. And you said some like I'm gonna go with like technical words or whatever junk words, but like you said some words that sound like maybe you have training. Do you have any training in like voice acting or singing or any of that stuff?
No, not at all. It's literally just Tori and I like to mess around with each other and doing voices and doing that for periods of time. I know for Giovanni, outside of like what we were playing, I read a lot outside of it, and so I'll practice reading in whatever character I'm playing that season or that year. I'll practice reading random things that I'm already going to be reading, and I practice saying it in that character's voice.
Hmm.
And that's usually how I just get it to feel more natural.
Uh, okay, so I'm gonna come back to this question that I just thought of, but that's
Mhm.
funny that you say that you practice. I do that, but I have this, and I think a lot of people do this phrase for each character that I have to say in order to figure out where it's supposed to be. Do you have things like that, or are you able to just sort of jump into it?
Yes, absolutely. And that is always a recommendation.
Okay.
With Ulfric, his was gonna be winter is coming, but I did not stick to that accent. So it did not end up going. For Barons, it's one phrase that I said a lot as him, which is, "Oh, for fuck's sake." And I've had
Hmm.
to kind of untrain myself to stop saying that phrase. I think for Giovanni, it's like, I'm a little gay. It's my birthday. What you want? That kind of, and there's always a phrase, that you should always, like, hopefully work into what you're going to be saying anyways. That way it comes out more
Yeah.
natural, but it is a perfect way to reset your voice and get, like, your jaw posturing right, like, all of that technical
Yeah.
stuff.
Interesting. Most of mine are greetings, for the record. Unfortunately,
Yes.
Barry's was not. So I had to like lean away from the mic and say junk over and over again because it wasn't hello, you know?
Yes.
But yeah, okay, cool. I have no idea what I said about holding a question, so I guess we'll just ignore that one. I forgot that junk immediately. Um, let's see. We were talking about. Yeah, I don't know. Don't worry. I have a million questions for you.
Mhm.
How do you? So you come up with maybe a voice, or maybe you work with Tori or whatever. Is it always the same process to create a character? Do you come up with in-depth backstories and character sheets and all that stuff, or do you more improv it?
Um, a lot of it depends on if we think that the season's going to be long or not. There's more work into, let's say, the dwarves. They had a whole history of things. And I knew halfway through LL season one that I wanted to play a dwarf because I had randomly in the probably in the middle of RP or who knows, maybe I was in the bathroom, sometimes that happens. Um, where I would just think, oh, this would be a great idea for a character. And I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to have this whole backstory about like tradition and how important that is. And I want to explore that through that character. But not everything was like that. In LL season one, I think we just wanted to try vampires because we'd never done vampires before. And we had just finished watching What We Do in the Shadows. And we're like, what if we made characters like that? Um, And so I started practicing that accent. The very, very obvious vampire type of accent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then as we played, I got to know the character more. Sometimes it's just like it almost feels intrinsic, like how you just know certain things about the character, even if you've never written it down. You're like, this character would never do this, and this character would never do that. Sometimes you just know, and you build off of that. But each process is different. Ulfric was well, we wanted to test characters and we wanted to give our group freedom to each have their own type of character. And so I said, well, what if we were mercenaries? That way we have one connecting thing. There's a reason for us to be together, which is that we work together.
Mm-hmm.
And then let the pieces fall where they do. And then we each created our own characters on our own. Ulfric's the first thing that came from Ulfric was his image. I knew I wanted him to be bald and pale and have a lot of markings on his body. I wanted him to have learned magic via basically torture. Um and that was just something I instantly knew of him. His image is based off of a character in Hoods and Outlaws. It's another game where they have a mystic character, and so I saw that character and I was like, oh, I would actually love to design a character with this look. And
Mm-hmm.
so Ulfric came to be, and then I decided the accent would be Sean Bean, and then it wasn't. Um, and then the orphan thing came because I had seen a video on things that myths about ears, and one of them was about a cockroach crawling into people's ears and what that's like. And I decided to be like, oh, if you're not careful, I saw that happen in an orphanage once. Um, Literally just
Okay.
random things I remember for the purpose of either making people laugh or uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes part of the character. And that's why Ulfric became an orphan. Because I was like, oh yeah, at the orphanage I was, or I said, oh, what if I just keep joking saying, back at the orphanage this happened and all that. A lot of things start off as jokes, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And they're serious things, obviously, but they're usually packed within a joke. And that just slowly builds the character. Ulfric was very bare bones when I first started because he was just a character to test out servers.
Yeah.
And then he served that purpose. But he did become deeper as I played him.
You you brought up so much stuff. I don't know where to start, but I will say that a lot of us, me, other people, we know you as you and uh,
Mhm.
almost always Tori, but definitely
Mhm.
more recently, more people, a specific group, whatever. Have y'all ever experimented with not playing together? I mean, there's no reason to if you don't want to, but um, have y'all tried like separate sort of stuff?
One thing that Tori and I have talked about is that at the end of the day, it's her and I, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We've been friends outside of RP, um, and it's our 10-year friend anniversary, this
Cute.
December. Um, but we love to tell stories together.
Mm-hmm.
So that is always like, it doesn't matter if like we're in a group of 15 or in a group of 5 or if it's just us two. It's always going to be us, having some connection in some way because I think we bring out the best in each other as far as like storytelling goes.
Mm-hmm.
Um and at the end of the day, like we always do this for fun. Everybody does this for fun or does this to tell a story because they find that fun. It's so much better to tell a story with your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's why I don't have any plans. I don't think she has any plans. As I said, we've talked about it and we've always been, like, we saw eye to eye that this was something we like doing together. We like sharing it.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
yeah.
I don't need any details if you don't want to give them, but I'm just gonna ask and we'll just see what happens. Did you meet in gaming, like online, or did you already know each other and transition into gaming online and stuff?
We met through a mutual friend. Um, one December, when I was looking for people to play with, and I knew this person who was looking for people to join their group, to play Left 4 Dead. I joined. I bullied Tori, as she always likes to remind me. Um, and then eventually we became friends when she peeled the layers to me being an asshole.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought, but I didn't want to jump to that conclusion, so that's how I wrote all the questions. But I will say that, in my opinion at least, to quote TikTok, you two are literal goals. Like, in my opinion, I think that is the reason that we play multiplayer games. Yeah, sure, we're telling a story or whatever, but as I said in my last interview, like, I also need a captive audience who's willing to come and play, like, no matter what. Like, it's not just one
Yeah.
match and go, right? So
Hmm.
you being in this instance an expert, I guess, in maintaining a gaming friendship that lasts years and years and having this thing that we all think is amazing. Do you have any like suggestions or tips for doing that sort of thing and not necessarily finding them because we all want different stuff, but maintaining over time?
Oh boy, maintaining. I mean, we've all lost friends here and there. I think sometimes people just click. Tori and I have a lot in common, but we have a lot of things that we don't have in common. As far as maintaining it, you have to put in the time, you know? And that's why we don't RP separately either,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a way for us to spend a fuck ton of time together where we're telling stories, and we're doing something we both love while we're spending time together.
Mm-hmm.
Not every friendship is going to be that, and that's okay. Um, but you kind of just have to accept that some are going to be closer than others, and some are going to last for a certain amount of time and then dwindle. Um, it's an unfortunate, thing, but it
Mm-hmm.
happens. Just, I honestly just don't try and force anything. Let it come to you. I didn't really think that, 10 years ago, Tori and I would be still friends. Or not like, oh, she's terrible, but you know what I mean. And nobody knows what
Yeah, right, of
tomorrow will
course.
bring, so.
Well, so I you recently went and hung out in person. I too recently went to a wedding in person, someone I knew
Mhm.
online, right? That's cool, that's dope. And those are like obviously very good friendships. Like, hey, I'm willing to like go in person somewhere. It's not just like, I send you a message every once in a while. But
Okay.
do you think then that this actual thing we're playing, this game, this RP thing, with its concept of seasons, actually sort of limits us in these relationships? Because you make a new character and that character doesn't hang out with this person you've been gaming with for, say, weeks or months, right? Do you think the nature of RP not only helps us, but also might hurt us from getting this friendship?
Mm, it really depends on the type of person you are. I mean, not everybody's out there looking for friends.
Okay.
But I can give an example of like recent friendships that I've made. I'm not like I don't really talk to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very sociable. I'm very bad socially. But one of the things like the last season for LLRP season 2, it was my first time doing like romance RP, and from that came a friendship with Girl of Crows. And then we found out that we have so much more in common outside of RP. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really the key. You can't just have it be RP. Like Tori and I have other things in common besides RP. This is like our great big love, and we always talk about going out and LARPing and things like that. But we also have other things, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously we were friends before we RP'd. So honestly, if you have things in common, if you have things that you share, the friendship can and will grow, but it will really depend if you do click or you don't.
Yeah.
And with RP, I mean, it is difficult because you are playing another character, but I think the best way to find out if you mesh well is kind of how you talk about RP. And I think that's how I figured out, that Girl of Crows and I meshed well because we had a lot of similar likes and interests outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You said like don't force it or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
in my opinion, I I think, at least for me, that forcing it is actually an option. Not that like, oh, I'm forcing you to be my friend, but often what I'll do is I'll invite the people that I hang out with all the time to do something. But I also, since I have done this a lot and we've discussed a lot about telling people that they're great, I will scroll through the DMs that I've sent and look for people that I think might click with whatever I'm going to do, and I'll just invite them too. And it's not something that I used to do, but my whole worldview and philosophy is a certain way that like it works for me, I think. Um, and I think that's a way that we can include people beyond the season, because the season ends and you don't play on a server anymore. You technically aren't ever interacting with that person, but you still think they're great, and if you can find something else to bring them in, that's what I try and do. Yeah. I don't know.
I wouldn't call that forcing. I think that's
Okay.
more reaching out, extending an olive branch, that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Rather than by forcing it, I mean like if it's clear that somebody isn't interested
Oh
because they
yeah.
don't really like respond or they're not really receptive and you continue, I think that's really where the forcing it is what I mean.
Definitely.
Um Sometimes, yeah, you had fun in RP, but sometimes it's just RP. Um I've had people kind of reach out because they thought I was like Katya. And I'm just like, I mean, sure, there are some characteristics that we could share, but
Uh-huh.
I'm not my character. And I'd prefer not to be like, you know, seen as the person that I'm playing.
Yeah. Perfect. So on Katya, um,
Mhm.
or as you say, Katia. I guess I don't say it that way now that I think about it. I'm not sure I've ever said it out loud. Anyway, um,
Okay.
so this and frick, all I can think is Marlowe. the other one. These two characters are evil, right? And wait, hold on, pause. First, let me ask you, because I have it written down. Do you think that our characters, like you said, are similar or pieces of us or reflections of us, or pieces of us?
Um, Depends on the player. Some people play themselves, but as a dragonkin or whatever. I think sometimes our own humors can just peek through a character. Um, and I think sometimes things of our past or our upbringing can poke through a character. Um, we all draw different things from our own lives into the character, but I think it's very important to put a pretty big wall over the character you're playing and who you are, because that is really where, if somebody's mean to you or somebody doesn't like your character, you're gonna take it personal. And so it's better to put that wall there just for your own sake, your own mental well-being.
Mm-hmm. Um, and let me say, my characters often seem to be on the wrong side of your characters and your group.
Mhm.
It's just the way it works out.
Mhm.
At this time multiple times, but I will say your character and
Hey, you robbed from me.
what?
Yeah, it's a pirate group. Remember in Atlas? You robbed from Giovanni.
Not well, okay. Yeah,
You were
so
with the group that robbed from Giovanni, to be
yeah,
precise.
yeah, to be precise, not me
I
specifically,
said
but
we were
that is
friends.
true. That is
Yes.
true. But I was about to say your character also very much supported the Samson character that I played, and I
Mhm.
will say that no matter your alignment and my alignment, your characters and group generally come to the events that I put on. Like
Yes.
it's a version of support even if you're there to ruin it or whatever, like you
We're
still show up.
specifically there to ruin it. Yes.
And so
Um,
I wrote that down specifically. Thank you very much for supporting me all these times. I appreciate it very
mhm.
much.
Yeah, I'm sad I couldn't attend the spirit thing. I think it would have been perfect for Ulfric, truthfully. But unfortunately, well, I went to the wedding,
Hmm.
and so I was not at home near my computer. But yeah, I always try to go to events. I always try to find a reason for my characters to want to go to these events, even if it is to run it, because I do want to partake in.
Hmm.
It's the best place to get RP. And it is, a way to support other players. Um, Even if you're doing it in an antagonistic way.
Yeah. I I did see Ulfric walk up to and pass the shrine or whatever, and I was like, that's all your stuff. Awesome. So that was
I
cool.
did see it,
But
yes.
on the back on the we'll say evil characters, um,
Mm.
I have two thoughts I want to look at. First off, um, do you think there always has to be something bad, some negative scenario, some darkness, all of that sort of bad stuff?
What do you mean? Like overall story wise or within a
Well,
character?
let's say we have Barry, who is just the Mad Hatter ripped off because I can do the voice a little bit. Um, just going around having fun doing tea parties, right? No matter who he runs into, just sort of doing the same thing. And like, okay, it's a story that I was sort of building into like a friend kind of relationship with Nellie, right? And then we have evil vampires and violence and torture and all that junk. Would the Barry character have been fine without that? Did did the server need bad characters? Did his story need bad things to happen to him, or would it have been fine without it?
I think depends on if you're going for a more realistic approach or not. Because, I mean, this is probably just more of a worldview thing. Bad things happen to good people, right? Or we've all had, moments in our lives that were fucking shit, and we either learned or didn't learn from them. Um, I think they are necessary. I think if we're all in the same team, or let's put it, um, it at times it can get stagnant. Um, and it doesn't mean that necessarily we're going into evil and good. Sometimes people can just have differing opinions on what the good thing is based off of their own upbringing or their own experiences. And I think that's far more interesting than everybody agreeing all the time. Sometimes it's those moments of tension that make for good RP if the buildup is right. Some people are just dicks to be dicks, and I don't think that's good either.
Yeah.
Ulfric, I wouldn't even categorize him as evil. He does bad things, but for money. Um, his motivation is very clear. He wants to survive. He doesn't want to starve to death, and a lot of it has to do with his own history of being held in captivity. And yeah, he does terrible things, and to some people, he's a terrible person. But it's more interesting when there are characters who are conflicted about that because he's nice to them or he aids them in some way or other. He never sees things as like, I'm good, I'm bad. He's like, this is necessary, this is what we need to do, and so I'm gonna do it. And that's it. And I think that makes at times an interesting character. Baron was kind of like the opposite. He was very much must do the right thing, must do good, no killing, no murdering. Unless his hand was forced, right? That's when he was willing to fight, when his hand was forced. But even he had an interesting moment where we were trapped, um and this was kind of an event from another player. We were there to defend, and the love of his life was in danger, and she was about to die. Um and it got to that turning point where he was willing to let somebody else die in her stead, and that challenged his you know goodness, his righteousness. And I think that was interesting because it made Baron like have a hard time looking at this person he was willing to sacrifice for the person he loved. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I did that, And it made the following scenes even more interesting because yeah, the Spider Cave incident, he was ready to give the voices what they wanted. He was telling uh the person to give in and just go with them and probably die. And he made quote unquote amends by sacrificing another person when two people were held captive. Um you didn't trust those beforehand. When two people were captive, that's why he was so willing to let the other person go, because he's like, I have to make amends. So I think terrible things happening to good people puts them in interesting situations. It tests how good are you really? Are you just good because it's easy? Or is it innate? Is it natural? And so, yeah, I absolutely. I think bad things are always necessary for that
Okay.
reason.
So your example is, I mean, you read a lot. I'm sure you know. Um, it is a moral conundrum that is often given to people, right? Save a
Yeah.
stranger, save a person you care about, save five
Mhm.
strangers, a person you care about, over and over until someone's hand is forced,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
on that, then, do you think? Hold on, let me see how I worded it. So I would say that that is something people struggle with often, right? Like anyone can say what they would do, but there are definitely people out there stealing and saying, I'm doing this because I must. There are definitely people who are doing things even beyond that that I don't need to identify, but and justifying it based on their worldview and their upbringing and all of that stuff, right? So it's
Yeah.
always a moral quandary as to what is right, what is wrong, philosophically, worldview, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think we should portray these things without the ability to say this is a thought experiment, this is a cautionary tale? Without streaming yourself, you obviously can't tell people, I don't think this is right, or I'm just playing it out like he would, right? So
Mhm.
uh, I mean, the answer is obviously play what you want, but do you think about the message you're sending out to other people?
Um, the thing with that is we're all 18 and up, and while I
Mm-hmm.
get that some people younger might be more easily influenced by one thing or the other, I think we all already have like our set worldviews based off of like, what we've lived and what we've experienced. I mean, I'm getting to turn 30, so it's not like me RPing is going to suddenly change my whole outlook and perspective. I'm really more like, wow, that was a really interesting story and it brought up an interesting question, but it's not really going to like change my moral compass. Um, I mean, I'm a dick. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, it'd be funny if this happened. Like personally, I ain't sorry to you, but I thought it was funny that Janupi, just poofed.
Yeah.
um, but it sometimes it's just I think it's more important to just play the character that you want to play, and do what they are going to do. I always thought that Baron was a character that would never sacrifice somebody else. Um, always put the greater good, right, above everything, even his own personal feeling. But in that moment, it did not feel right for him. This is a person he knew had struggled, and this is a person he knew her strife in life and how much she had suffered, and he saw that, you know, she was going to end up dead in a cave full of spiders. And he did not want that for her because he loved her too much to do that. And he loved her more than the greater good at that point. So, um, I think it's just better to just play whatever the character, whatever feels right for the character, because that's how you end up with really interesting stories. And I think interesting stories are whatever it says, whether good wins, whether bad wins. I think that's more I think that's better than just worrying about the message you're sending. And again, specifically because we're all adults. Obviously, some stories will make us sad, some things you're just like, "Oh wow, that really affected me in this way." But I don't think we're all gonna be like, "We should all be evil and take over the world." So, I don't think any of us
Dang
should be
it.
worried about that.
You don't need to redeem these things while I'm doing other stuff. Janupi's voice is like that. Okay, good. Um,
I love that part. His final words. Ah.
great. So, on his final words, on the absolute torture of Barry, you know that I personally struggled with it, not necessarily because like oh, I don't want to portray it, even though that was part of it, because I'm obviously streaming at the same time, right, for both of them.
Mhm.
But at the
Yeah.
point at which both of my characters interacted with your group and had less than exemplary ends,
Mhm.
I I start not caring, and then at the end other people are saying, "Oh, I'm interested in this. I want to do this, or I want to see where this goes." And then
Yeah.
when something comes along and smashes into it, I decide what I think is right in all situations, and then I struggle with presenting it because I'm not going to give people the ability to solve a mystery, or these relationships I've built with Barry, for example, they're just going to vanish and no one's going to know. Like
Mhm.
it, I think it's interesting, yes, because it gives me the opportunity to say on stream, here's what I think, here's my philosophy, here's my worldview. And then at the same time, I'm like, oh, well, I'm also about to take away from a bunch of stuff that people are going to be disappointed about. So that sucks. So it's like this constant struggle. So yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I'm an adult, right? I mean, I don't
Mhm. Mhm.
seek out bad things, but like you said, they happen to everyone. And I don't know. It's
Yeah.
crazy. um,
Um,
Go
I
ahead.
think
Yeah.
sometimes you just don't get to solve the mystery, you know? I had a backstory for Katya about her losing her husband. 99% of people don't fucking know that. She killed him and she didn't mean to when she was
Mm.
turned. And no one will ever know that in character or interact with that or have anything to do with that. But I know, and a lot of her interactions and a lot of her behaviors were influenced because of that experience. So even if other people don't know, it's always still in like the back of the players. I think sometimes it's to serve yourself rather than to other people. And that's okay. If it serves you more than somebody else, it is your character.
This It's a beautiful philosophical debate when it comes down to it, and I love it. I think it's great. And then on that, I do think you have a unique viewpoint because of your long-standing friendship and relationship with the person you're playing games with.
Mhm.
Would you agree with the concept that we're basically telling the story to ourselves, right? Like, nobody gets to see all of the junk. Nobody
Mhm.
has all the ideas because they're playing their own character. So, as a
Yeah.
story writer, do you think that's accurate? Or a reader, sorry, a story reader, I guess.
I mean, we're all writers,
Mhm.
we're all writing out these character stories as we're going along. Even if they're not written in page, we are essentially creating stories, even if it's orally. But yeah, there's always more to the story than what you read. Um, there's always so much more to a character that you're never gonna know about, that the author will. That is absolutely a thing that happens. And you could probably ask published authors, more and more about the characters within the stories, and they'll have so many things that they never put to to page, and it just is what it is. Sometimes it's not about what isn't written. Sometimes what is written is more important. Um,
Hmm.
and that's just how I view again with, Katya and the whole, you know, the reason she's so feral and the reason she has this worldview is because of what she's experienced. And so many people did not know what she experienced. They only saw the very tip of the surface. Um, and then some people dug a little bit and some people dug a lot. And at the end of the day, and this is actually one of the things that Tori and I love doing, we would stay up till 6, 7 in the morning all night talking about all these different things that A could have happened or B things that were not explored. And it's we bond over that, knowing how much more to each of our characters there is, and we enjoy sharing that. So while other people may not get to, sometimes you get to share that with a friend. And that's a good way to unwind and kind of get a better understanding of your character. And again, it serves you as the player more than it serves other people. What they get is a fraction of the story. They're your quote unquote readers,
Mhm.
and you get the rest.
Yeah, I've often said during these interviews that I can't believe there have been years and years of them, but like if you stream, tell whatever the story is, like tell it to the viewers, pull someone in who's willing and tell the story. And that's exactly what I did with Janupi on the first interview. And there's all this like stuff that nobody saw or got to figure out or all of that junk because I mean, I did it on stream, but nobody's watching all of it except one person. But yeah, like I think that that's amazing that we are writing a story just for ourselves, and it sucks that we're only writing it for ourselves. So being able to tell it and share it and all that stuff, like I get it now. I understand why people do these exit stories and the background stuff, and I might not do that, but I definitely understand it a lot more now, and I think that's very cool. Um, uh, balls, I forgot something else. Anyway, so on the concept of like getting to the backstory and like trying to find out stuff, um, how should we do it? How do we do it? Are there like uh, tools or skills or anything that we can do to try and find out about someone else's character?
Yeah, it's very easy. Ask questions. It's if you ever look, and I learned this through my writing classes that I took in like university and stuff. Um a main character, right? And we're all playing main characters in our own stories. A main character should always be inquisitive. Always. You should always ask people questions about like what it is they're doing, what they're experiencing, what, just any question. Fuck. Ask them what their favorite color is. Why is that their favorite color?
Sailing
You
questions,
can
perfect.
but you can start small and sometimes you find out something big. I asked Tamina why she painted herself, and that's how I ended up finding out about like what had happened to her people.
Hmm.
Um and it was a simple question, why do you paint yourself, right? Why do you do this? Why do you look this way? Things like that. Um and obviously you're going to get different answers depending on the player because some people think a lot about how their character looks and some people very little. Um and but I think asking questions from big to small is the best way to peel those layers until you get to the center. Um and that is the best thing you can do as a character. Ask everything.
I wanted to ask her as well. I often commented on her clothes, but I felt like Janupi would not care about how
And
she painted
sometimes
herself.
characters,
So
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I did see that as well. Plus, he didn't see colors, so I mean, like, that's
Yeah,
not something I felt like made sense. Yeah.
some characters are made for that. I know Pebble, um she only asked questions that were for information. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard because you have to determine, well, what information is she trying to get? Obviously relevant information. But I mean, I'm just an inquisitive person or nosy, as some people might say. So that always comes out into my characters where I'm asking them, just about every question. Um, and people will always answer. But, don't forget to ask some questions back, or if there is an opening, sometimes you can reveal something about your character through the questions you ask or your responses to their responses. And that's really it has to be a give and take, and it's difficult. But I think it's worth it in the end.
Yeah. For the record, I did get a sort of frustrated DM from Crows, Girl of Crows, about not being able to investigate, even though the person wanted
Mhm.
to. And I was like, yeah, cool, good.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
so going back to the thing I forgot, that's basically what we're doing. We're going forward one and then backward one. Have you read Hills Like White Elephants? Is that a thing?
No, I have not.
All right,
I
cool.
do not know what that is.
So it's a poem or a short story, I can't remember, but it's something that some people study during like English courses and junk, and
Mhm.
basically it's a very innocuous story and poem about I think they're on a train or something, and as they go past, they're describing the hills, and the hills are like white elephants that go past or whatever. Like it's just a very basic story. And I was
Yeah.
thinking about it when you were talking about the story that you don't see. That's apparently it or something like it. Linked there. It says annotated, so I don't exactly know what it is. But the actual story is much deeper, and there's a lot of metaphor and comparison because talking about the concept of abortion was so negative
Oh,
and
I have read this, but in high school.
yeah. So
Yes.
it's very old, right? And I
Mhm.
I do think that that's a lot of what happens with our characters. I think a lot of us see, oh, Forge is with the mercenaries, she's kind of mean, or Katya is a vampire and an obvious jerk, right? And then behind it, there's all this subtext and like these different
Yes.
things that we've planned and played through and all that junk. So, um, yeah,
Very
that's just
nice
what I
for
was
the
thinking about.
record.
Okay,
Super nice.
sure. Yeah, okay, whatever. I mean,
I just like a little bit of torture. Who doesn't?
uh, I I'm pretty sure Barry gave a glowing review when he left. So there you go.
Exactly. See? Get
Yeah.
love with here.
Yeah, there definitely weren't
Uh,
hours of anguish trying to figure out what to do in the in between. Yeah, definitely not.
nope.
um, so then, on the concept of uh, evil and stories and all that stuff, do you think Conan lends itself to a lot of very edgy stories where people are just expressing the thing that they think is cool, or that sort of concept?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. Yeah. I think there's so many cool concepts that some people can get carried away because there's I want to be this, no wait, I want to be that, but what if I just combine everything and
Yeah.
just and it's like, grounding yourself in a bit of reality, it just makes for a much more a better experience for all those involved, including yourself. But I think there's so many stories that people want to tell that sometimes they get lost in the concept rather than like the actual story. Um, and it's so important to ground yourself a little bit, like humble yourself. And it's not easy. Like yeah, I would also like to play this half demon, half angel, whatever, super powerful, super cool character because they look cool. And yeah, it's kind of like a power fantasy. And
Hmm.
Conan is the perfect place for a power fantasy where you have six-pack abs and you're fucking Thor. Um, but what makes it cool is when you can kind of like see parts of yourself in those characters. It feels more human that way, and it feels more satisfying that way when you have these weaknesses and these flaws. And that always makes for a better story. Like
So,
Ulfric is powerful, but
uh-huh.
he can't do divine magic. He can't. There's so many things that he couldn't do. Katya, super cool, but whenever she would talk about like her past, she would close up, she would tense up. It was something she could not process, her grief. And I think that's like, here's this really powerful vampire who like could rip your fucking neck, and she's struggling with her grief, you know? And like that's so really like, who hasn't experienced grief and had trouble processing it?
Hmm.
I think that those kinds of things are better for an audience and yourself as an audience for your character and your story than this person's indestructible and yes, fucking Thor.
So I can't believe it. I have so many notes and questions written down that I forgot to ask the other Conan people about this, but you definitely know where I'm coming from. You know how Atlas lends itself to a lot of NPCs, or that concept of background characters and all of that,
Yes.
like that I've struggled with people about, like you're so important and all that junk. So
Mhm.
imagine, if you will, Conan, but the server's like, hey, everyone here is just a werewolf, and like everyone's cool and unique, but you're all also just werewolves, right? Do you think that background characters would emerge, or would it even, well, I mean, it wouldn't work, we know it wouldn't work, but um in that sort of theory, what do you think would happen?
If we were all essentially the same, I guess,
Hmm.
is what you mean.
Yeah,
I
or
mean,
that's true, all vampires, all angels, all
right.
whatever.
Right, you become less unique because I mean, I don't think Katya was unique because there was so many vampires in LL season 1. And there was a fuck ton that I was like, "Oh, what if we made an event where we had all vampire party, you know?"
Yeah.
And it was totally, plausible for us to do that because there were so many vampires around. I think if we can all be, you can have all these other characters where they're this and that. I think what makes them unique is whatever else you bring to them. It's not like what they are, but who they are. That's really going to, put them aside. As far as side characters go, I mean, we're all side characters in somebody else's story, right? So for some, you're going to be a very important character, and for others, you're going to be a side character. I think Ulfric is a main character within the Black Lotus, but outside of that, he is more of like that weird guy in the corner over there, who
Okay.
sometimes says weird things. But yeah, I think it really just, you gotta be willing to be both, main and side character at times.
I've discussed this a lot, and Conan makes it difficult because you don't have, well, you do, but you don't, like um, you're not gathering five types of wood all the time, and trying to sell
Ugh,
it and like all that junk, right? Like I
yeah.
think that's where people feel like they fade into the background, like all they do is trade, or um that's the concept we've wrestled with. And I don't think there's a lot of it in Conan, because like even if you just make a human, you have
Yeah.
to battle stuff, and you have to like be superhuman to us, like killing freaking giant spiders, and I don't know because I've
Mhm.
never actually played, but the game,
Yeah, Conan. Yeah,
so
it's different than Atlas in that way. Uh, in Dark Side, I only did trade RP, and that was it. I think that's kind of why I lost love for it.
mhm.
I think you can do so much more in Conan as far as your character goes, and definitely, I think that's where you end up with, edgy characters at times or overpowered characters. because there's so much more to do. I think it's as a player, it's really where you're coming from, what you're trying to accomplish with the character. Some people are trying to be hero-esque or the hero. They want to lead an army because they're like OOC, they're very tactical and they love the mechanics of fighting. And they like to take charge in those situations. They
Okay.
like strategy games, probably.
Well, well said and not offensive. I approve of that. I thought you were going to say something else, so well done. Okay.
No, no. I mean, we all have different interests, and sometimes that, again, leaks into the characters we're playing. Baron was just supposed to be like just a dwarf, like literally just a dwarf, very mortal, very like he doesn't have anything special about him, but the bonds he made within that season were special to him, and only the people who were part of that know it. Like even like people who are like just outside of the circle of the dwarves, or people who interacted a lot with the dwarves, are aware of like who he became. He was kind of expected to take charge in a lot of situations, and he's like, "What?" And he kept saying, I'm just a stone carver,"
Uh huh.
and he really was. That's all he wanted. He just wanted to carve stone.
I don't.
Um,
I don't think any of your endeavors are just a dwarf or just anything. I mean,
I
I
did
I
try.
think.
That was what I was trying. He became more than that for sure, but he was very much like basically after being a vampire who is immortal and all this shit, I wanted something more grounded. And what's more grounded than a dwarf that lives underground?
True.
Literally. Um, but he became more through the story and the things that happened to him, obviously. It changed him in that way. Um, but it really just depends. What are you trying to bring into the story? What kind of character are you trying to bring into the story? And what
Hmm.
are you trying to provide for other people? And
Yeah.
my
Earlier,
hope is RP.
earlier you said. I'm pretty sure this is a quote. You said, "Whatever you happen to be playing that season or that
Mhm.
year," uh, which is a very long time and a long
Uh-huh.
concept to play a specific character or whatever. How do you how do you identify when it's time to go to the next character or stick with one? I guess.
Um, Tori and I always stick with a character from the beginning of the season to whatever's the end.
Hmm.
And then the character goes into the vault, whether it be 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. It's pretty much the same. If it's a 1 month thing, we know we're just going to do more silly characters, characters that we don't have a lot planned for, or we're not going to discuss too much outside of it in our outside of our P.
Hmm.
Sometimes those characters develop into something more. After the
Yeah.
first season of LL, we knew that they did longer seasons, and so we were like, okay, this is a longer story form. So we wanted to have some preparations for a longer story form, and we knew that we would be playing dwarves from the beginning until whatever's the end. And that the end of the season could come quicker if our characters died.
Hmm.
Like that was always a possibility. Katya almost died. Baron almost died several times. He fell off a cliff, like, and it was not good. Um, Ulfric did die and was revived. But that's always a possibility. So the season's end could come quicker than you expect, but we always just go based off what the server provides, which is whatever the start is, and then whatever the end is.
Um, so your character may die, right? I've talked to
Hmm.
a lot of people who obviously don't plan that stuff, but will allow it to happen. Do you
Yeah.
use dice rolls? Do you have set sort of standards that might occur that will end this character's life or whatever?
Uh-huh. A lot of it depends on the scene. Big battles, I let depending on the race of the character, how many downs are you allowed? So vampires obviously have more downs. Um and humans are probably, on the lower end of that spectrum, so they have less downs allowed. And then from there it's bleed out time. So I usually just wait, um, and every so often lower the health of the character with the RP Redux. I just use that because it's easier. Whatever HP they have, if it reaches 0, they're dead. Um, I will roll to see if they quote unquote stabilize, but if they're not getting any treatment, then honestly, there's no point in rolling for that. There's no point in doing any of that. If they were like out in the middle of the forest and I'm waiting there for like 10 minutes, that character's dying. They're not getting any treatment. But if it's like a scene where people are trying to, and I give more allowance because in a scene where there's a lot of people and they're doing healing and they're having to type and they're having to roll, that shit takes time. So you kind of have to let some of that time go and be like, okay, obviously, if this much time happened, you're gonna probably not make it, but because it takes time to have other players react to what's going on
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
assess the scene, and you have to respond and you have to set it, and show where you're injured and things like that, and then they're having to react, then I give more leeway, so that the person can react to that. So it really depends on the RP scene. If it's alone in the middle of nowhere and there's nothing happening, and then I'm just probably going to roll death saves and see whether or not my character is going to hold out until treatment can be had. And if they do, then I just see how the scene goes.
Yeah,
And that's that. I really don't like, once you die, bringing a character back. And it just so happened that one of the people we were rolling with, Chaos, who's often a feature in Tori and I's group, obviously, they're married.
obviously.
Obviously. So he is a frequent feature, but not always. Sometimes he rolls on
Mhm.
his own.
Yep.
He changed his character, and it just so happened to be a necromancer. And so that is pretty much the only reason that Ulfric ended up coming back. If it weren't for him having changed his character, Ulfric just would have been dead.
Yeah.
Um, so on circumstances saved him in the end. Um, and even then, I'm very much like, it's a high DC because I don't like not having repercussions for people's choices. And they had chosen to focus on the worm and not treat his wounds. And I felt like, well, that's a choice. He should die.
Yeah.
Um,
Dang.
but they tried to fix it, and I said, okay, it's a high DC, 3 fails, he's gone. I just go by the rule of 3 just because it's simpler and easier.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody understands it. And I said a critical fail counts as 2 because that's just D&D. I've never played D&D, but I know that that's typically like the D&D rule.
Yeah.
And I just for ease, because everybody involved knew that, just use that. But yeah, I honestly, consequences are the best thing in RP, I think. It makes for good story.
Yeah, I've never rolled on any character ever, even though I've talked to dozens of people who
Mhm.
do it. Um, but I rolled for Janupi, and it is some junk
Mhm.
that I don't think I like, but I mean, I understand it, and it's very
Mhm.
scary, I gotta
Yeah.
say. Um, I rolled to see if he was actually connected to the painting or if he survived without it. Obviously, failed.
Uh-huh.
And then I rolled to see what would happen if it left, and I did the same thing, and he vanished. So that was the
Mhm.
end. I was like, "What? All right." It's
Yeah,
difficult though.
it is.
I do
Um,
think that your hardcoreness in counting downs alone outside in the wilderness is dope though. That's how I want to play. Hardcore like that, you know?
it's just more that it feels more, again, more real.
Mhm.
Um, is if you're playing a human and you've just been like stabbed 100 times and you're bleeding out, you're not getting any treatment. If you say, "Yeah, I lived," it just feels like what? Like as in, if I was another character listening to that, I'd be like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
How?" You know? It can take you out of RP,
Yeah, yeah.
truthfully.
That's what I did
Um,
with Barry. That's the exact thing.
mhm.
Here I have a human person and people are jumping down cliffs. Like I kept
Uh-huh,
saying
uh-huh.
like I can't go. Like we need to go around. I can't make it down there. And they were like, "Why?"
Yeah, 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 I completely get that. As dwarves, I avoided cliffs. As
Mhm.
vampires, I was doing backflips.
Yeah.
I said, Look at this, serrated," while I go down, because I was like, she's not gonna die from this. She's
Yeah.
very much immortal. The game mechanics can be tricky. And everybody has like the different ways. Not everybody's going to roll. Sometimes people go by what feels right
Mhm.
rather than a roll. But when I don't want to be the decider, that's really where the dice come in because I'm just like, I love my character. I'm gonna be biased. I want him to
Mhm.
live because I want to keep playing him. I want to keep playing with my friends. So I'm like, no, no, you leave that to chance because you're gonna be a little baby about it. And so I bring the dice, and the dice, fate, quote unquote, gets to decide. And sometimes it makes for a pretty interesting story. And because I love consequences, it actually changed something within Ulfric that he has to fix eventually at some point. Um, and I just don't like being able to like snap my fingers and then I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
in this upcoming season, I'm playing a healer. So once
ooh.
more, I don't like doing the whole I snap my fingers and everybody's healed. It has to be limited.
Yeah, I a lot of people came along, I guess, because they found Boxster, and Boxster was very sad and slow and all this junk, right? But he wasn't always that way. I actually was playing him like peppy and chipper, and he kind of sounded like this, right? Like this is just a voice I can do, and it's not very different from my own. And then he got hung and burned, and like obviously
Nice.
he should have died. And I was like, I don't want to stop because I'm so new. Like I don't want to
Uh-huh.
make a new character. I've been through a little bit. And then at the same time I was like, well, he can't just walk away from that, like
Yeah.
that's impossible. So that's why he sounded the way he did, and he was all messed up and junk. But
Mhm.
I fully support being hardcore and killing your characters and stuff. I just, like you said, I have trouble doing it.
Yeah, everybody's going to be a bit biased towards the character, I think. Whether or not they think they won't be, they're like, I'm okay with killing a character, and then you kind of get attached because you made it and you've been walking in their shoes for some time, it's very easy to get attached. And because you're attached, you can sometimes just make the decision that will benefit the character rather than, well, sometimes it's the end of the line for a character. Um, it's better to leave it to chance. But I get why some people don't do that. That stuff is very much personal preference. I do it because I don't like I don't want to take people out of the RP and the setting. This is a very difficult life, and it's even harder if you're a human. And Ulfric is, despite being powerful, human, and a lot of things can still kill him.
Yeah.
Um, so I didn't want to be like, well, he lives because I said so.
Yeah. I I support playing a human in Conan personally. Definitely try it out if anyone's playing and has never done it. It's
Yeah, it's
radically
rewarding.
different, and yeah, it's
Yes.
rewarding too. Janupi is actually a human. I made some mistakes making his character, so um, he was human underneath the transmog, right? And I
I
couldn't see
see.
anything. I was slowly
Hmm.
dying every day, like all sorts of stuff. So Ulfric's actually interesting. He's one of the few people that I could tell was around um, without. I mentioned it actually. I had that ball of light always with him. It it
Yeah.
doesn't show up through the stream filter. Like you can't see the red glow at all. So
Uh-huh.
I could like turn and orient at Ulfric and be like, "Hello," and it looked like magic. I think on the stream, it was very cool. But we explained it like Janupi's been there hundreds of years. He's gonna know when something
Yeah.
changes. So I just thought it was cool.
Right.
Anyway,
I used to because he's human and can't see.
yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
I played Barry.
Mhm.
He didn't even have a light ball. It was awful.
Oh god. Yeah. Playing human like that is actually torture.
Yeah, yeah. But like I keep saying, I play hardcore characters or
Yes,
troubling
yes.
characters or something. So, um,
Mhm.
speaking of troubling or personal preference or whatever, how do you feel about server announcements, Discord pings, that sort of stuff?
Uh, well, I guess it depends on what the announcement's about. If it's like regarding server going down, things like that, I'm all for it. As far as the events go, um, it depends on the event, I suppose. I think I'd prefer it in its own channel.
Mhm.
Just because some things it's just different category. I like things organized in a certain way.
Okay.
That's just a personal preference. If it's in an overall announcement that is necessary because, oh hey, um this thing is happening in the server and we need to shut it down for maintenance, blah blah blah. Perfectly acceptable. That's perfectly fine. Especially in games, sometimes you can, sometimes it doesn't pop up. It's very glitchy, so
Yeah.
that's a good way to let people know server's coming down. If we're talking about like, um, events and what announcements should be here and there, I personally don't like announcements in Discord, for things like that unless they're kind of vague.
Hmm.
Um, that way people can kind of react in their character rather than as a player looking for RP. Like say anybody near G3 would hear a rumbling from coming from the ground, right? And then you're like, "Oh, well, I'm near that area." Um,
I
so
I
I would
don't
definitely feel it, you
I
know?
don't know where that is. Did we live near that? Or no?
That was a random
Okay. I don't know.
actually, Where did we live? In 11. I think we lived near 11,
Okay, yeah, true, yeah,
around there.
yeah. That's right. Anyway,
But yeah, no, it's just really an example. Like around this area, you would feel things, you would hear things, smell things, kind of using sensations to give characters a hint of what they would
yeah,
find in a certain area without being like, come here to RP, come here for this event.
yeah,
Because at least you have a still an element of surprise. All you're going off of is like a rumbling, or the smell of sulfur is in the air, or you see bolts of lightnings or beams of light. And you're still gonna be like, what the fuck's happening? And that kind of builds onto RP rather than just here's an event, because you don't know um precisely what will happen, versus at everyone at this moment in time we will fight, they will be attacking, they will be doing this. I think it can take away a bit from RP.
yeah. I think I'm still like way too inexperienced to have sort of a strong opinion, but
Hmm.
I obviously see the difference between the two servers I've played on for events, and it's interesting to think that like not having a big in-game announcement about sort of the goal of whatever the event is. Obviously, it's Janupi. I didn't go. I have no idea what
Yeah.
happened. But I would see a pop up like, "Here's the goal of
Hmm.
the event," and I was thinking like, "Oh, that's very strange." But when I
Yeah.
think back on Lost Legends, for example, instead of that, what we had was weeks of, or maybe not weeks, at least a week, sure, of people going out and finding clues and talking to each other and then having a meeting and then having a second meeting to tell everyone else about what happened at the meeting. And like, it was all this stuff.
You forget the secret meetings.
Well,
um
I wasn't invited to the secret meetings personally.
Neither was I. But I was having them a lot, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It happens. Sometimes you're talking to a person outside, and that's yeah, we don't talk about those.
Hmm.
So many meetings. Sometimes we would have them in the bathroom. Um, yeah, I think having experienced both, I do like being able to talk to one another um for information. I think it gives a lot of RP.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's easy to miss stuff. And sometimes it can be irritating because you're playing telephone. Like, this person said this and that, and then it's like, actually, no, they didn't say anything like that. You just
Yeah.
misinterpreted it. But sometimes it causes misunderstandings, and you have to go out of your way to talk to more people. And again, you're just constantly talking. Um, it can get to be too much. I don't think one way is better than the other per se. I think it's more of like preference. My only thing, I don't want to be told what my goal is, because
Hmm.
every character has their own goal. Like, the goal of this battle being XYZ, I think it's a bit too much of a handhold. And it's like, well, some characters are there to help save the world. Some characters are there to help save the people who are there to save the world. And
Yeah.
some characters are there to get money. um so to kind of be like, the goal of this event is this or that, it's just, yeah, it's too much of a handhold. um
Yeah.
I think
I
taking it back a bit.
I think so too, but then at the same time, like without the lead up and all the research and the meetings and stuff, like how would we ever be involved together? And then beyond that, I think it's even more interesting if a server's trying to host an event, right? They're obviously going to pick a time that many people are on. Then they're going
Yeah.
to check and make sure it's, legit enough to run the event that they're going to do in the way that they plan, right? I assume, anyway, that they scale. If it's PvP, they're going to scale the HP to a certain number of
Yeah.
people who might show up, right? But
Mhm.
I don't and have never played a character that's going to show up. Like, if you look at just the list and you scale it for that, there's going to be characters who don't show up, and then like everyone else is getting stomped. I think it's like very difficult to not only set up and then also run, but I've also never done it, so I don't really know.
Um, for an example, in season 1 of LL, the way we knew when the um Death Claw were attacking was because we had captured messengers that
Hmm.
had a letter within them. And in that letter is when we got the information on the date and time. And then I believe via Discord, it was in character letter sent to people's mailboxes, and that was kind of how people knew, okay, that this was the end of season event. And then the event just happened without a pop-up of saying like your goal is to
Yeah.
defeat the Death Claw. I think people know what the goal is at that point, and that's
Hmm.
really like my thing about it. It's like obviously if you're new, you might not know. There was actually somebody there that was new and had to be caught up like
Yeah.
the day of. Um, but it also gives people a chance to talk to one another.
Yeah.
And I think that's better than having a pop-up. Like, give people a chance to talk to one another over these things. I think that's more important. And let people decide what their own goals are for that event. Some people wanted a trophy, some people wanted revenge. Um, I know Katya fought because she's like, well, I want to get the fuck out of here and I never want to return.
Mhm.
Um, and I can't do that if the world is gone. So, so
True.
she fought. She didn't like. She would have been fine if like the Death Claw were defeated and 99% of the people there died. She'd be like, perfect. I got my real goal. Um. So yeah, it's really more about just how specific it was. A vampire wants other people dead? Crazy.
Shocking.
it,
On
it,
the
it was a lot of stuff that happened. That's why she wanted them dead.
when it comes to hand holding or not wanting it, that's sort of
Mhm.
um, the concept of meta. And I'm sure you saw me ask, do you think that meta is rampant or prevalent or even worth considering, or do you have some other viewpoint of it?
I think everybody met us even a little bit. Because we all know where to get aloe. We all know where to get certain uh
Whoa,
where's the
whoa,
best
whoa,
spot to
whoa,
get
whoa!
iron.
I have no idea. I will tell you, I do not
Okay,
know.
sorry. Most of us who have played the game have some meta information of where to find things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if your character's new to the lands, you're not necessarily going to know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's kind of hard to avoid that information when you also need to harvest some of that shit so that your character can be at the state that they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Like my character already has magic. So I need to go gather 50 fucking lotus plants to get that magic. I need to know where the fuck those lotus plants are. So there's always a little bit of meta. It's hard not to if you are doing your own shit, but I think when it becomes a problem is often in PvP.
Yeah.
That is usually where it's oh god, it can turn into an all-out war, OOC. A lot of people get really touchy because some characters might react a different way. if they know something about your character, even when they shouldn't.
Right.
An example of that is Barry and the fun little gathering we had.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it was live streamed. And somebody was actually in your chat didn't like what we did. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and their character treated me immediately different when I first met them. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Interesting.
okay. And it's hard not to notice that because it went from like 0 to 100 vaguely, like it was barely disguised threats about what they should do to vampires. And so I'm just like, this is the first time I've met you and you're threatening my character because of something you watched on stream. And because it's getting into, you know, kind of that PvP area where we're likely going to get into a bit of a, fight, that's really when it can get really touchy and tricky. Because it's like Barry had no scars. Barry had no memory. I patched them up real good.
Uh-huh.
And while I'm always about like leaving clues and shit, and you kind of did that with like being weird,
Mm-hmm.
there was no real reason to be immediately hostile. You can be suspicious without being like hostile, you know? And I think like, oof. I don't know
All
if you were part of like the whole LLRP with the who has the heart. That was a mess. That
no,
was okay. A lot of people, in and out because people knew who had the heart OOC. And
eh,
it was pretty clear
is this a
that it
thing in
was
season
known.
one? Yeah,
Yeah, this is
where it was
season
moved
one.
around or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
OOC, I knew.
I knew people were moving it, but I was like, I don't care about anything. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, a lot of the characters were more gun ho about being aggressive to the people they believed have the heart or the people they knew had the heart. And I think a lot of that was fueled by OOC knowledge. Things like that can get a lot more intense and you can't really lie your way out. You're not really given you're never going to be given like that benefit of the doubt anymore because people know without a doubt that you have it. And OOC knowledge can get in the way of that, unfortunately. And when you're like two different factions, when you have two differing opinions, that's really when meta can really just stir trouble up. I think like there's also lesser offensive types of meta where I'm like, whatever about it. Like a lot of people kept calling me Katerina, and that was what I had on my tag. But I always introduced myself as Katya. Not once
Yeah.
did I ever say Katerina.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which was her real name, obviously. But I had an instance where somebody was going to insist that my name was Katerina because somebody else told them it was Katerina.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that because it was meta information. But I just said, I think you're mistaken, and they
Yeah.
just moved on because it's nothing. But there's certain metas or certain meta information that can get people, uh ready to pull out their pitchforks, and it typically ties around when it's going to turn into PvP. That's really when meta information can really change how people interact with one another, how hostile they are with one another, and they don't really let the scene go where it goes. You know what? I've seen the no meta informata. I've
Mm-hmm.
actually seen that. I've seen your clan name or your ship. Yeah, it's very hard. Unfortunately, once you know something, you cannot unknow it, and it's
Hmm.
going to influence your actions. And sometimes it's the best thing you can do for yourself is just avoid the big things. It's whatever if it's a small thing, like
Yeah.
knowing where to get the lotus plants, it's whatever. Like obviously try and play to what your character knows, but it's not like the worst thing in the world. Um and just kind of go with what the scene demands, but yeah, if you cannot separate like you knowing something and you have to be like, "No, I know you have it." Honestly, it's best to just learn to let that information go and give people benefit of the doubt rather than being like, "No, I'm 100% sure. I know it," and react in that way like you 100% sure you know.
When it comes to separating yourself and removing yourself, I can't in a specific instance, which is um, probably PvP. Uh,
Mhm.
and so I play a lot of characters that don't fight or never fight or, stuff like that because I know for a fact that if given the chance to PvP against someone, I'm going to try to kill them no matter what my character thinks. Nothing.
Uh-huh.
We saw it a couple times with Pierre. Pierre only fist fights, but there was one instance where we were gambling, and so I fist fought this dude, and I was like, I'm going to murder this bro, like 100%. And
Mhm.
I tried to kill him, and then he went down. They got him up. He made some comments about the way I was fighting because, like, uh, I wanted to win, like, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
snap, you're right. I just wanted to win, and maybe I wouldn't have won in this scenario. So I just didn't heal myself, and then we fought again, and he won obviously because I didn't heal and I didn't do anything. But
Uh-huh.
um, as someone who has been in the situation where you might wind up PvPing with someone else, do you have any tips, like for me, for playing it true instead of playing to kill them?
I mean, I guess it depends. Is it a situation where it's a life or death scenario? I think your character would probably fight um to the death, you know? They would do anything. Even if it's something that feels quote unquote out of character. Sometimes people do things that are out of character in real life because they want to
Hmm.
live. They want to survive. Um and so I think you have to think of the character. Is this the type of character that would, in this pressure scenario, try to essentially cheat to win, right?
Yeah,
Or use everything they can to their advantage. Um, I know the answer for Ulfric is yes. For Katya, absolutely.
obviously.
And for Baron, it's no. Honor is more important. Even if I die, I want to die honorably. Um, Even if Crow would be like, "No, fuck off, don't die honorably." Well, she would understand, but she wouldn't like it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it really just depends on the character. If they would try to do something that is quote unquote abnormal for them. We're not consistent. People aren't consistent. So sometimes we ourselves do things that are out of character, quote unquote, right? Um, I think it's okay to have those moments. It just really depends on the character, but at the same time, don't be afraid to lose. In the same breath of like, don't be afraid if your character dies. Sometimes it makes for a good story. Sometimes it makes a good story for your fellow RP, community to react to that death. Um, There was a character in season 2 of LL that died pretty early on, and it affected Baron as a character quite a lot. So I think it made Crow and Baron have a very deep conversation about like life and death and respecting other people's choice when it comes to dying, because she was trying to get another character to bring the guy back, and Baron said that's not our place.
Yeah.
We're not like, yeah, I want him back, but we cannot make that decision for him. His family has to do that, has to make that decision. Um, and it sucks and loss sucks, but it is what it is. And they were very much, Crow was very much like, I don't want to lose anyone because she had already lost so much. And Baron's like, I've lost a lot too, but it's also part of life kind of boat. But yeah, death can bring really amazing stories. So really just go for what's true to the character. If the character is somebody who would do absolutely everything to survive, um, then yeah, do it. But if you die, you know, be okay with that. Be okay with sometimes, whoops, you were David and you did not win this time.
Uh, I want to take your advice to heart, but also all my brain heard
Mhm.
was kill them, just kill them. It doesn't matter, just kill them. So I guess I'll work on that. um, uh,
If it
in
fits the character, yeah, kill them.
sure, okay, okay. Yeah, that's what I heard. Um, I I consider you basically like, or not consider you. I have this idea of you as a like an unstoppable force, right? Like a sort
Mm,
of going all the time. See you in different characters, see you in different genders and voices and accents and
yeah.
all sorts of unique ideas all the time. And then you say, oh, well, like I read a lot. I'm like, how
Mhm.
can you possibly have even more time beyond all of that to do other junk? So, like, do you set aside time? Do you how do you, that age old
Mhm.
question of like, how do you find time for real life or this or
Right.
whatever? You got strategies for that?
Um, I mean, I usually take breaks between seasons of RP, and I think this is a very important one and something that a lot more people should do. It's actually insane to me how people go from one RP thing to the next RP thing without any breaks in between. I usually let the season's end be the break because this season was very short. That's the only reason that we're continuing. But usually in between seasons we take breaks. Um, and that's a perfect time to unwind and move away from the character that you just played, because you can get so into a character and you could lose a bit of yourself. And during that time is usually when I catch up on reading. If there's something like, I don't read as much as like, I do say I read, but like there are times where I just don't read at all. Um then I get into like, well, I'm gonna spend all day and night reading this one thing. I'm gonna read it from beginning to end, and I'm gonna focus on just that and nothing else. And that's usually in between seasons. That's the best time to do it. Um you gotta take a break from RP. It's good for you mentally, especially if your character has gone through a lot, because, you know, your mind does not distinguish well what's real and not real. When it comes to that, a lot of feelings attached to characters um can feel very real. If you are a crier like me, I cry when characters die, so, you know, having to experience that grief, you just want to take a step away, um, and just unwind, play video games, play anything to just get away from it,
Hmm.
and relax. Kind of like, I hate to do this to you. Um, like in BDSM, right? There's the quote unquote aftercare,
Hmm.
right? That they consider very important.
Hmm.
It's kind of like that, but for yourself. You're
Right.
the one caring for yourself, your mentality. And then when the time is right, get back to RP. I think a lot of people kind of exhaust themselves in creating so many characters, so many stories that they might kind of overwhelm themselves a bit. Uh so yeah, just take time off and enjoy something else once you're done with a character.
As a crier myself and also someone who has lost themselves in a character and should not have done that, I agree. But I also literally wrote, quote, if they say just quit or take a break, point out that leaving is often a struggle and a big choice for people, because they
Yes.
are so tied to it. So, um,
Yeah. It
yeah.
helps again if you have other people to do this with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um Tori and I take breaks together. And it helps to have that other person take you away from it, honestly. Um and if you have friends who have other interests that you share, do that with them. Uh if you honestly, you just have to force yourself sometimes to do it. Because it's hard to do what's good for you. But necessary, absolutely necessary. A good example of this, I build for my group a lot, and my group knows how insane I can get when
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to get it perfect. And there's no perfect build. Um, but Bog recently joined our group, and that's helped me step away from a build with before I just start saying it's ugly, I need to destroy it, it's not good, I need to redo everything. Having an anchor or someone anchor you down so you're not lost in the creativity of it all is so important. And so in the season's end, once you've lost yourself inside of the world of this universe and the character and all that and the feelings attached to it, you need somebody to pull you out before you drown.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
um, so, it's already been 2 hours, and I just want to keep talking to you because, like I said, I think you're great. But before I ask,
Man, thank
obviously
you.
the last question, yes, of course. Um, this is just something I thought of, and I thought, oh, that would be really funny, just as a concept to say like, oh, this came from this or whatever. Do you think that it's possible and even worth it to like have a book group and like this month we're reading this book and we're gonna take a day and we're just gonna discuss it in a channel or something like that? Is that something that sounds like doable or whatever?
With the right people, absolutely. It really depends on the people if they're interested in it. For me personally, I love sharing I love sharing what I love with
Yeah.
people I love.
Hmm.
That's where you get the best of it. I think some people are okay with strangers. I have to do it with people I trust and have built that trust with. And it's why I can talk to Tori about that stuff, and it's why I talk to like Girl of Crows about it because we found a shared mutual love, and I know that I can trust them with those types of conversations. Wherever we wound up, wherever we go, even if we're just talking in circles. But I think for some people, absolutely, that could be beneficial if they're the type of people that loves doing that with people they might not necessarily know very well. And it might be a way to get some people to learn each other better,
Yeah.
certainly. But yeah, it just really depends. But yeah, if that is something that works for someone, then I definitely recommend doing that.
I
Reading is good.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's a good message to put out. Reading is good. Good call.
Yes. It'll
I'll,
also help you guys spell better. Sorry,
Ooh, savage.
sorry, but it's the amount of times I've seen definitely spelled 50 different ways. I'm just like, oh my God, please. I
Yes,
can't.
I I have trouble spelling, attempting to do it. Uh, what? Ah, dang, I can't even think of the word now. Awkward.
It's okay.
The word that means how it sounds.
Yes.
Anyway, whatever that word is.
Onomatopoeia, something like that.
I think onomatopoeia is a word that
S-
sounds like the
Sounds
sound.
like
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes,
Hey,
yes. That's what it
anyway, okay, we're nerds.
is.
Yeah, I think I do have friends personally that I can obviously because going to visit them and all that junk, right? So cool. I have
Uh-huh.
these friends, but I'm always looking to uh,
Make more.
make more, but also like try and grow because um, I I don't want to always be the same. I want to
Yeah.
continue to be different. So if you're looking for friends, hit me up. Not necessarily that we will be friends, but I'm willing to try. So not you. I mean, I'm talking to chat. I mean, you too also, but mostly talking to chat. So yeah, cool. Do you have anything that you want to say to potential new players or current players in the RP community as a whole, or anybody else?
First rule of our P Club is have fun, I suppose.
Okay, cool, cool.
Second rule is be naked, I guess. Yeah, at least in
Okay,
Conan.
yeah. Well, okay. Wow. Okay. I I do already know the rules. Perfect. Awesome.
There you go. Never trust it. That's not a rule. That's blasphemy. Never. You can always trust a dwarf, but you can't
I
trust a celestial. I can't even do his voice anymore. I apologize.
no. It's interesting to hear all the. Like I said, I can hear a bunch of different references to characters. It's still
Yeah.
blowing my mind. So it's very cool.
I've ruined my own accent from doing all these other accents, to be honest. You'll never
Yeah.
sound the same once you start doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, Pierre comes out of me randomly in certain words, and I'm like, ugh, why? It's not even
I
a.
get a yeah, I get a southern accent sometimes because I've played southern characters. I'm like, I did not grow up in the South.
Hmm,
I mean, I live
interesting.
in it, but still, I don't interact with
Yo.
enough people for it to influence me.
Well, you might not know this, but we all actually live in the South.
Oh shit.
Predominantly viewers of this channel, me, people in RP, most of us are, for some reason or another, in Texas or in Austin or near to it. It's very strange.
Oh,
So that's
trying to
cool.
escape, maybe.
I I don't know. It's weird, but there's a lot of people in the South and in
A
Texas. So
case study. Case study, then. There's less to do. That's what it is.
I
Michigan is
see.
certainly not in the South. True.
Okay, so we got Preceptor and then everyone else. Awesome. Um, cool.
Okay.
Thank you very much for giving me your time
Mhm,
and
of
your
course.
thoughts. Yeah.
I have so many.
Yeah, I know. I want to hear them. I think it's interesting, like to see someone play a character and then talk to them about it is unique in
Yeah.
itself, but to talk about the outside thing of that and like the whole
Uh-huh.
RP concept, it's also cool. Um, even though I do
Yeah.
it over and over again, and most people say the same stuff.
Well, hopefully there was something new here, but I did my
Definitely.
best.
You did great. And like I said, I appreciate it.
Hmm.
I guess good night to you. And I will end this call and then I will
Hmm.
end the stream.
Bye.
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 Dang, I thought we were going to do the no, you